while I was away, I had a lot of time to just sort of think and observe the world, and see what thoughts came into my mind when I noticed particular things. And there was one evening where I was on the balcony of our little apartment, and I could see off in the distance there was a street light, and we were sort of in an out of town little neighborhood. So the street light was kind of the only source of light going on. And I could just see this like massive clump of moths all just like flying towards the light, then getting like burnt or whatever, kind of dropping off a bit and then going again. And they were just in this process until like some of them, you just see them fall to like their death. They just stop flying. And I just thought to myself, this is an interesting part of nature that this is happening. You know, and I think we all are aware of that a moth will be attracted to light, yet the light is the thing that damages it and can potentially kill it. So that's an interesting model. And I was like, then the thought kind of came to me, well, in many ways, human psychology can work like this. We're attracted to the very thing that damages us sometimes, not all the time, but that can be a sort of pattern that we begin to follow. And the exact line that came to me in my head was, man is like a moth, drawn to the very things that kill the capacity for meaning in his life. He's blinded by the will to gratify his impulse, right? He's blinded to the damage because there's this drive for the thing that appears so attractive, like the moth to the light. And it links to many other things we'd had before. Maybe it's just a similar analogy to the woman in the red dress, but it's the idea that if something is alluring and attractive, that doesn't mean it's good. Because you have to kind of have a level of detachment and look at something objectively and be like, can I trust the allure? What is the intention behind the allure? Is it genuinely the beautiful woman of my dreams, or is it a siren on the side of the rocks in sort of mythology that would draw like men on sailing boats in and lead them to their death? Is it an illusion? And I thought in our modern world, I made a couple notes on this, that like things like entertainment, right? On the surface, they look innocent and alluring. Like, you know, it's great. You can go on an app on your phone and watch loads of videos across the world of people sort of being funny or entertaining or whatever, or you can watch TV and you can get engaged in your favorite soap opera or your favorite sitcom or whatever. But really, these things lure you in, and while you're in this trance, it's actually damaging your capacity for real meaning in life, because your life around you, your real life, just decays. Now, I'm not saying that you should never watch TV or never use social media on it. You know, I'm not that extremist with these things. I'm just saying it's a good example of, it's like a light for the moth. It's something alluring. It's entertaining. It's stimulating. But really, it is damaging you. And if you spend your life in these things, if you live your life vicariously through people you follow online, or you spend these thousands of hours a year putting your attention and time into these things, then it's damaging your capacity for real meaning and fulfillment in your life. Just in the same way that the moth is drawn to the light that burns it and could kill it. So a bit of a short point and sort of similar to things we said before, but in a different frame. Have you got any thoughts?
The lights, yeah, it's a nice analogy. And I like how you brung up entertainment, because it's so true, and it's less of a obvious like destroyer. So we spoke about this concept of what is your God, what is that thing that is bigger than you, and some of the less obvious ways, like you kind of pointed to there, are things like celebrity culture that people seem to worship, are things like, I think narcissism could be one, where if you're not drawn to meaning, then one of the other things that you could fall into is the enlargement of the self and become very narcissistic. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it's very true. You see it. What do people love to kind of spend their time worshipping or paying their attention to? It is the celebrity culture, it is the music icons, it is their favorite actors. And I think I heard this somewhere where when someone watches a horror film, it gives them a false sense of accomplishment that they're doing something scary.
Mm.
And I think that is what's going on when you watch something or you listen to something, is you are temporarily that character, but you feel like you're getting their benefits. But what happens when that film turns off and you're left with the same person that you still are? And then I guess maybe we can go into a bit more about why is this destructive? Because I agree with you that a little bit is okay. But people live their life like this. A lot of people get so, I guess, they binge this stuff. So what's going wrong, and why is this destructive?
Well, I just want to quickly say one line that I read in a Substack article like a couple of weeks ago that's been like sat on my Notion page, and I've been trying to weave it into a conversation or a point. And I think this is a good point. This is a good position to put it in there. It said, our phones are like tiny gods that we're trying not to worship. And I was like, ooh, why is that? Well, maybe because the online world these days is like a source of ideology, and it gives you a set of beliefs and understanding of the world, just like religious texts do. But rather than it being like this book that, you know, is talking about the supernatural being or whatever, and miracles, and it's then spread by the religious leaders, and you come together as a community and you discuss the ideas and you try and live along the principles of that text or whatever. It's just like fragments of engaging information online that it all sort of subconsciously putting thoughts and ideas into your mind and creating that belief system of how you engage and behave in the world. And I just really like that. And I think that is something that's kind of going on. But to answer your question, like, yeah, I think sometimes, well, I think the general point is the reason you find the majority of things entertaining is because it gives you a simulated experience of something that is so engaging that you could experience in the real world, but is difficult to do, and it's quite hard to sort of orchestrate consistently. So, like, why do we like, let's say, I don't know, sitcoms like Friends, right? So many people, it's a comfort thing for them. I think it's because it gives you, I mean, you are almost like a character. You don't say anything, right? Because you can't, because you're not actually in the thing, but you're observing like the social world going on, and the gossip and the relationships and the changes and the dynamics and the personalities. And it's like you are part of that friend group when you're engaging in that show. It gives you a simulated experience of being a sort of young person in America and dealing with, you know, relationship highs and lows and all that. I mean, I've never really watched Friends, but that's how I see it. And I think we can use these things as inspiration and an inkling into what's the right path in life. I mean, you watch great movies do that. That's why I think there are forms of entertainment that are powerful and positive, like a great film that shows you and outlines for you a path and a way of being in life that's positive can be so useful, because you can then go and sort of follow that archetypal set of behaviors and beliefs in your own life. Like Forrest Gump, for example, is ultimately a film about kindness and the positive parts of human nature, and how that can build a great life, and how you can, you know, affect people positively, even if you're not dealt a fantastic hand in life, and things like that, where I go, well, there's something good to it. But yeah, if you live your life vicariously through these things and never make an attempt to bridge the gap between like the simulated experience, whatever that is, in whatever media source that is for you, and then try and bridge it and create it in your own life, then you're just going to become stuck and sort of decay. So they're sources of inspiration, and they're pieces of art that we should consume and we should learn from, and they can spark ideas and give us experiences. But you can't outsource your agency and your will to live life to these things. You have to try and create your own movie, create your own story in what you're doing, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. People watch Friends because they want friends.
They want to be part of that sort of, they want that sort of engaging social scene, you know?
And it's, when you refer to our phones, the right word is world, because it is a different world, and it genuinely is a whole ecosystem of life on your phone. And so our attention seems to be more in that world than sort of reality. And well, that's going to have a lot of effects, isn't it? I think about, stemming from a little bit from one of my points, it's novelty, sorry. That is a desire. It's not one of the desires we necessarily think about, but it's not the sort of the materialism, the vanity that comes straight to mind, but what these things have in common is novelty. And that's at the root of all these entertainment, video games, etc. But novelty can probably be good. Like both of our recent trips to different countries, that's a novel experience, and that's a light coming on, to use your fly analogy. But that can also manifest into, well, drama, and which to me has negative connotations, because that's what really, one of the biggest worlds that people live in is what's going on here, and trying to understand, especially social drama. People seem to love it. People seem to eat it up. If you speak to an average uni girl whose life revolves around drinking, they'll tell you that they love drama, or they'll tell you that they love hearing about drama, but they don't like being in it. So it's this thing that in our brain is, we love novel experiences, and it may be because I think maybe it's the hippocampus and how your memory, it kind of, you try and synthesize an experience into your memory, and then it realizes you don't have a memory of it, and it sparks something. And I don't know, maybe I'm using science I don't really understand, but maybe your amygdala gets into play, and it maybe gets a fear response, because fear and drama are kind of associated. I know I'm waffling now, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. I think there's a line, isn't there? It's like many things. You want to walk the line between the two. You want novelty, but you don't want so much novelty that eventually you're chasing it so much that your life becomes too chaotic and your attention is just fragmented between all these different sources of like stimulation. You want to be exploring the unknown in your life. You want to be taking risks, but you want them to also be monitored with like a level of discipline and like attention paid to the things that matter, the things you have to do consistently. And there's kind of a different kind of novelty that opens up when you do focus on one particular thing and don't get sort of darted between different, sources of drama or gossip or novelty, let's say. There's novelty that opens up through sticking to something, which is kind of like a deeper level of novelty, which is mastery, which is opportunities opening up, which is skill being developed. I think we're all just looking to be thrilled, aren't we? But there's different types of thrill. There's thrill that sort of fragments you and scrambles your life. And there's thrill that comes through like treating your life like a work of art and taking it and taking some responsibility for what you do. I mean, we all just want to engage with our reality. We all just want to engage with our life in a meaningful way. And these things like, social drama and social gossip and things, they are engaging. They are, our brain is wired for that. We're such social creatures by nature that does make us feel like our life is interesting. And so there's a time and a place for it, but it can't be the only thing.
Do you know what it's like? It's like that Bruce Lee practice. I fear the man who practices 1,000 kick. I fear the man who practices one kick 1,000 times rather than 1,000 kicks one time. The sort of the drama, the novelty, the lights is really the 1,000 different kicks. The scrolling is 1,000 different videos. But yeah, imagine getting really, really good at that one thing.
Well, it's the difference between depth and shallowness in life, and we live in a society where there is so much access to information and activities and people and different ways to live life, to the tiny little details of like what your morning routine's like, or the dietary pattern you follow, or who you follow on social media. There's just so much choice, let's say, and breadth of choice that you can almost spread yourself so thin across everything. But I think what we want and what's most meaningful is depth in life, is make your relationships with a handful of people good. Make your work very specific and get really good at that thing. That's what a lot of Cal Newport's work is about. I think there's a lot of truth in it. Or just you want depth and connection over shallowness and breadth, I think. And that's an illusion we're brought into, is that more is better. I think we talked about this before in the context of like creativity and things, but more isn't always better. No, not at all. Not at all.
Recently, Theo von hosted Andrew Huberman, and there was a bit where Huberman was talking about how sex with the same partner is a 200% increase in dopamine, but sex with a new partner is a 400 to 500% increase in dopamine.
Interesting.
And it's because of the novelty in the novelty. It really contributes to how much happiness and sort of the thrill of the occasion.
Well, dopamine doesn't like the known. It doesn't even like known reward. Right? What dopamine wants is the risk. It wants the anticipation of a potential reward. Right? That's why, if in gambling, if you won every time, yes, it would be bloody, financially positive, but it wouldn't be fun because you know the outcome. Even if it's positive, you don't really want to know the outcome. Or a better context, let's say you go watch sport, right? Imagine if you go to watch sport, but you already know who's going to win. Do you know what I mean? It's like, why would you do that? And so, yeah, maybe you say in that intimate sense that the known partner is a known entity. So there's less dopamine because there's less anticipation of, will it be amazing? Because you kind of know it's going to be decent because you've had it before. But then the sort of more spiritual side of me goes, well, that's part of being a relationship, is trying to find that novelty with that same person, trying to access a different part of them and for them to access a different part of you and explore one another on a very deep level. So, but that's an interesting bit of research.
The one kick 1,000 times.
Exactly that.
One girl 1,000 times.
100% depth and connection. And I don't think there's a point where you know somebody completely. It's like, yes, maybe I see it as very, surface level and sort of egoic, and it's to go like you want the thrill of the new all the time. There's a certain level of depth and what's the right word I'm looking for here? Like significance in committing, I guess. And I guess that's what, Peterson talks a lot about sacrifice being a crucial part of meaning, because you sacrifice your opportunity for more novelty by committing. But in the commitment, you find depth. In the commitment, you find true connection. Maybe you can dart across multiple different things and have that novelty, engage the dopamine more, but then you sacrifice the capacity for the deeper connection, and you just stay in that surface level, and that ultimately isn't what you want. You might be led to believe, it's kind of like the moth, you're led to believe you want the novelty, you want the new, more, but will that just lead to damage to your spirit, to the meaning in your life? Possibly. To me, in my own life philosophy, that feels like it's the case.
Yeah. For context, cocaine was a 450% increased dopamine, so sex with a new partner is possibly more dopamine than cocaine. But they also made the point that when you age, you become free of desires. Like your desires kind of leave you in peace, and that's why you see old people doing the same shit every day, because they don't actually have the desire for novelty anymore. They're okay with living the same day all the time. So I think one question would be, well, how much novelty do you want? Because complete novelty to me would be like, I wake up tomorrow in a desert island with loads of people I can't speak the language to. That's not great. But also
it's too much chaos.
But at the same time, you don't want to be, well, I personally don't like the idea of being in the same house in Devon for 80 years and not really, maybe just sort of doing the same job every day, a monotonous job, and not really sort of growing. So I think actually, I do think novelty, we do want a little bit of it, and it's something that we shouldn't crush but we should perhaps, I think one thing we could use it to help deal with other desires. So maybe the desire for fame can be better separated by using the desire to want the novelty to talk to famous people, or the novelty of being in this nice place and other things that come with it. So maybe that's one solution. And I think in general, we just kind of want to keep people on our toes. Like we got, like you said, with the romance. When you were talking about that, we want to keep that, as Robert Greene talks about, the kind of the mystery in the relationship, the excitement. We want to keep people on their toes.
And that doesn't mean the sort of like, I don't know, the stupid like red pill philosophies of like withhold information about what you're doing and never tell anybody where you are and bullshit like that. I think the mystery can just be like, can you both continue to bloom in how much you share about your inner world to one another? Like your intimate partner or that person should be the person that knows you and the real you, the you within the skin, the you that doesn't have a name, the being, the awareness. They should know that essence of yourself is closest to anybody else in the world. And that takes, years and decades to sort of share. And I had one thing that I was going to say, and I've forgotten it now. What were you talking about before you referenced romance again? Oh, it may have just gone. That's all right. Oh no, that I've got it now. It's pinged back into my brain. Excellent. There's a novelty, rather than that you look for, that you create, I think. And that's by... And I was thinking about this in the context of flow state, right? What you want in flow is you want novelty that's built upon what you've previously done in that skill. When you're a musician, let's say, right? You don't want to just keep learning pieces that you already know with no novelty, but you don't want to, if you're an intermediate piano player, you don't want to have some crazy like Tchaikovsky composition placed in front of you and just told to play it. You want like the next step of novelty. You want like just the complexity that's just slightly above your current competence. Okay, and that's novelty that you've got to through skill, through discipline, through commitment. It's not a novelty where like, okay, you start playing the piano for 2 weeks. I'm going to start playing the violin. I'm going to start playing the flute. Now I'm going to try and start singing. Now I'm going to play the guitar. That's like shallow novelty. Whereas there's novelty of becoming more of a master at the one thing. And that, I think, is maybe a good frame of thinking about the difference we're talking here. Like, I've been playing basketball for 12 years, but I'm not going to suddenly start and go and play, like, paddle or play, like, darts because it's new. Instead, it's like, can I stretch my ability to play defense or a particular part of offense or a particular part of my ball handling skills? Can I create this dribble move that then I do so many times in practice that it becomes unconscious and I can do it in a game? That's novelty in the context of depth. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. One observation of flow state that I've had recently was the kind of speed that's attached to it. So when you're playing wheelchair basketball, the ball is there, that it's there. That action happens really, really quick. In a conversation, when it's going this place and then it's going to go this place, one key characteristic of flow is this speed, and speed helps retention. And that's what maybe these other experiences, films, social media, they do very well. They encapsulate that speed. They know how to keep you kind of in flow state. And another part of that would be the unconsciousness. When you're really gripped into a film, you're unconscious. And when you're on social media, you're unconscious, and that's why you're pissed off at yourself after you scroll. So I also wanted to get back to novelty in that, how I feel like one of the things that the word romance, I'd be interested in the actual definition, but I feel like a lot of romance is novelty. The guy that turns up with the flowers that the girl didn't expect, or I guess the gesture, the whole kind of that relationship going to a new romantic place, I feel like it's a massive characteristic, is the novelty. And so this concept of novelty is actually really in our lives because it's so attached to attention. It's so much in everything. There's a concept in marketing about I think it's like a purple cow in that if there was a normal cow and you drove past it, you wouldn't care. But if there's a purple cow, you would care. And that's because it's novel. Or I think it's one of the things that Robert Greene talks about with, I think there's a law called court attention at all costs. And one of the simple ways of doing that is just wearing a different color suit, a red one instead of a black one, and you want to get more attention because it's novel. So it's actually something we can use to our advantage as well a little bit. Like, but it's everywhere. Like, why in the gym do I find it interesting looking at this guy? There's this guy in the gym who has like a massive afro, and I find him quite funny because he puts his headphones on, and when he puts his headphones on, it like squishes the afro. There's a big line in it. But I find him more interesting than the guy that kind of just looks like a Lego man who I don't really care about, because not everyone has this massive afro. And yeah, he puts like, I bet he doesn't even look. I bet he doesn't even use a locker. He just sticks like his keys and everything in there. But yeah, I'll actually finish with this. There's this Albert Camus kind of inspection that he says. It's so wonderful for a neighborhood to experience a murder because the people are finally something to talk about that's bigger than them, that's something to gossip about. So yeah, I'll stop talking there.
Is it also Camus that said that the opposite of courage is not cowardice but conformity? Who said that? Let's have a look. Is that right? Conformity. It was. I know who wrote this. Not like, just don't tell me what the quote means. Who said? Oh no, it wasn't. It was a guy called Rollo May. Okay, maybe I'm chatting shit. Anyway, what I was going to say to that point, I think you've touched on something very true there. I think authentic development of our like uniqueness and idiosyncrasy is quite a beautiful thing. If you try and fabricate it and try and be different for the purpose of being different, people kind of see through that. Implicitly, we just know when somebody's like being fake or like trying, let's say, to be the center of attention when they maybe don't deserve it, or they're doing it in a like fabricated, superficial manner. That's not good, right? But if you express your authentic self that is different, that is unique, then it can be very, very positive for you in life. Like if I did this podcast and like spread like my thoughts and psychology and philosophy, but did it purely so people like pay attention to me, it's not going to feel good. They're going to sense that that's the case. You know what I mean? I feel like that's maybe why some clips out of context get interpreted wrong and stuff. But because I'm doing it just for me, it feels like like when people sort of come across it and like it, there is like a cool bit of novelty. You do this different thing. It's like people are just looking for something interesting, aren't they? And I think there's something to that for sure. It can be powerful.
Yeah, the fabricated point is reminded me of the loudest person in the room is the loneliest. Maybe there's some truth in that, because I don't think you have to be loud if you're loud kind of suggests to me like demanding attention and kind of manifest unconsciously maybe, but yeah, to kind of confirm the solution. So we want to create novelty, not what did you say about we want to create it, not something it?
Yeah, we want to, rather than sort of searching for it and like jumping from one thing to another all the time, it's creating it through like commitment to some kind of craft. You know, imagine the difference between the person that picks up a different musical instrument every 2 weeks to the person who masters like the violin. There's novelty in both, but which one has depth? You know what I mean? I think that's a nice way of thinking about it. And then instead of demanding attention, let's say, by telling everyone the different instrument you're playing every 2 weeks, you command attention by mastering the violin, right? You attract people's attention rather than trying to like suck it from them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm going to pivot now, and I'm going to try and do this point with the least amount of notice as possible because I do know it quite well. But basically it's this theory. It's called the theory, something like the theory of the opposites by Hegel, and basically Hegel believed that opposites are the same thing, or they come together to create something stronger. So if you think about two opposites like pleasure and pain, there is pleasure in pain, or there is pain in pleasure. He uses the example of, well, hate and love, in that you kind of need to hate someone, you kind of need to love them a little bit as well, because there's still that common denominator of that emotion that gives that significance. Yeah. And he uses, well, I think you can think of this in like a rose, in how if love isn't nurtured, then the rose decays. But that hate is still there, the attachment is still there. So that's why I guess they say, like, if you kind of want to, the strongest thing to sort of forget about a person is for them to be dead to you, because the feelings aren't attached, they disappear. So there's a couple of examples there. I think about like our own haters, in that they kind of still do love us, and they kind of still are a fan. They respect us, at least. It's that common denominator. And I think about how the hero and the villain are kind of the same thing. They just respond to pain differently.
Yeah, that's what Mosey's quoting.
I think about communism in the horseshoe theory, in that, communism and fascism, and that is kind of the same thing. They're two opposite ends of the horseshoe, but really they both lead to the exploitation of a small minority of power, often sort of illustrated by Animal Farm and things like that. And I think about this with Dostoevsky's perfect versus imperfect, in that the perfect world, you'd start smashing things up, so the actual perfect world would be imperfect. I think about this with the sublime, in that potentially what the sublime is two opposites. It's beauty and terror, and kind of crashing against each other. So it basically, you have the initial state, the thesis, then you have the opposite, the antithesis, and then you have the synthesis, the combination of both. And so I guess where's this idea going to? Why is it important? Well, or where's the solution? So I think there's a couple. One of them, the general solution, would be integration, as we spoke about before. But say if you're about to run a marathon, you have the, obviously, like, why are you doing this? You're about to callous your mind. You're very fearful, maybe. You're putting your body under cardiovascular stress. But you also have the pleasure of running and seeing the nice things, and how you feel afterwards when you've actually accomplished that, in body and in sort of mentality. But also, well, there's, Marcus Aurelius, what the obstacle that's in the way becomes the way. So I think it's integration. And I think if we don't really see past the benefits of doing something, I think the best way to integrate something is to bring someone along with you to do it. So I think if you're about to go through pain, I think pain's better experienced with someone else. And so, yeah, the single best way to integrate pain is to do it with others. I've been observing. I'll take the running example. I think it's been interesting to see, as sort of a guy that likes marketing, to see the increase in run clubs, and all these brands are basically, they are creating events and communities, and maybe if they're sort of loosely linked to health, they'll create a community that likes running, and then they'll all run with that kind of brand in mind. So, and it's become so popular that it's the single best way to meet people. Kind of, it's a massive social thing, and people in their 20s are all going to go on dates by meeting people at these run clubs, and dating apps have got involved, and it's a very big trend. And it's because we like that, going for that experience with someone else. And I've been kind of in business for a couple of years now, and I think that business is always more pleasurable when you've got someone to bounce it off. because otherwise it gets a bit lonely otherwise. So yeah, I think of this with a virtue as well, and that what is a virtue is the mix between excess and deficiency. So you don't want to cling to one side, maybe. But yeah, I guess that's kind of my thoughts.
It's very interesting. There's a lot of truth in what you said. Life is so paradoxical. It really is. It's like, I think Shakespeare was so right when he said nothing is good or bad, only thinking makes it so. Because even the negative things from a sort of, I don't know, sensory or emotional perspective can be so positive with the right perspective if you zoom out far enough, and these things are related. You know, the idea that I think pain and love are sort of, they're one thing. It's like there's this toss and turn, there's this pull, there's this push and pull kind of mechanism to all things in life. It's like by growing, you have to kill an old self of yours. There is a sort of like a physical push and pull to all things. You grow in one direction, it means you leave another direction behind. You feel a certain thing, well, there's going to be a sort of cost to that. You change, you move into a different direction, and something has to be sacrificed, I guess. And there are innate paradoxes in all of life. By becoming one thing, you are trimming off all the things that you could be. You know, there's loss in winning. It is interesting. It is an interesting theory, and it's very true. And yeah, I think you're right about it's important we try and derive the functional utility of this idea, and how do we integrate this into our lives, and how do we take that understanding and use it productively. And yeah, I think understanding that in the things you think you don't like, there is so much that you do like. Like there's so much wisdom to be found in going through something you on the surface don't like or that is negative. In the same way, I think the pleasure and pain example is so great. Like, why do people experience a runner's high? Well, because they put themselves in a state of stress that's uncomfortable, and there are certain neurochemical changes that occur that then give you a positive feeling. That's just a small scale example of the same thing, but you can do that in your life. I mean, like, people that commit themselves to really difficult crafts, there's some pain in that, there's some discomfort in that, there's sacrifice in that, but actually then that gives them like the meaning and the purpose and the legacy in their life they're looking for. All things are not just as they seem, I guess. All things are a paradox. You know, all things require sacrifice. All things have a level of cost benefit to them. And yeah, it's worth thinking about. It's an interesting way of looking at the world.
We all didn't like the 9 a.m. waking up for secondary school, but and many of us maybe saw secondary school as a chore, but it was actually quite good. And I think your point of zooming out far enough, that's how pain kind of it gets more relevant if you're scared to go through pain or you're going through pain. And so a lot of people think that the natural state of life is to avoid pain and to pursue pleasure, and no, I think you need to integrate them. So
I think in just the same way that the negation of the life force by fear violates our capacity for meaning in life, that's James Hollis's quote based on sort of Carl Jung's work. I think you can say the same thing of the negation of the life force by avoiding pain violates our capacity for meaning in life, violates the meaning of life. Avoiding pain means avoiding growth, right? You want to, rather than skirting around the pain and trying to just find the sunshine and the rainbows that are an illusion in most cases anyway, you want to become anti-fragile. You want to become strong enough so you can bear the pain and appreciate the fruits of your labor afterwards. You've got to be willing to get burnt if you're going to fight the dragon. But without fighting the dragon, you don't get the pot of gold. Do you know what I mean?
Tell me about the potency of taking opportunities.
Potency.
Potency, yeah.
Well, actually, it kind of links quite nicely from what we've been talking about. This one of Nietzsche's ideas. I saw this screenshot on Substack, and I saved it onto my phone. And and I guess I'll just read it as a beginning. But basically, Nietzsche had this idea that you should love your fate, and it's also kind of Stoic idea, but the idea of, I think it's amor fati, they call it, something like that, where you love your fate, you love what reality places in front of you, even if it's painful, even if it's negative, even if it's difficult, and responding to each situation, each part of your fate, whatever the hell that is, with this is what I need, right? It may look like a disaster, but going through it as if it's an opportunity and a challenge, and bringing love to this moment, not discouragement, as this like picture says, you will find the strength is there within you. Any disaster you can survive is an improvement in your character, your stature, and your life. What a privilege. This is when the spontaneity of your own nature will have a chance to flow. Then, when looking back at your life, you will see that the moments which seem to be great failures, followed by wreckage, were the incidents that shaped the life you have now. You'll see that this is really true. Nothing can happen to you that is not positive. Even though it looks and feels at the moment like a negative crisis, it is not. The crisis throws you back, and when you are required to exhibit strength, it comes. It's kind of like we've been talking about, okay? There's this, like, do you remember that, like, on, like, a bunch of, when I was on Instagram, there's a bunch of, like, motivational reels that have this same quote line where it's like, I asked God for strength and he gave me, challenge. And I asked God for wisdom, he gave me difficulty, or whatever, all that kind of thing, that, like, the thing you want is behind the difficulty that you don't want to face, right? The magic you're looking for is the work you're avoiding, to quote Chris Williamson, right? I think it's true. And that's why the Nietzsche thing pointed out to me as significant, and why it links to what we've been saying. You have to kind of push through the pain, the fear, the anxiety, and what you want is on the edge of that. The archetypal story of the dragon protecting the gold is so deep. It's so true. And anyway, I've been thinking about just how life-defining it can be to go through an opportunity. Like, let's say a door opens up for you, let's use this analogy, and going through that door in spite of your fear and in spite of the fact it'll be difficult or painful or whatever, or it requires sacrifice and things like this, just how crucial that can be. And I thought about it in the sense of that girl that you met randomly in London, and she said the thing about leaving your house. And you go, if you stay at home every day, you know for a fact nothing is going to happen. But if you go out, something may not happen. But at least there is a chance that something could happen. Like, you're putting your lottery ticket out in the world. You're at least cashing it in, right? You're not just not playing and staying in the security of knowing nothing's going to change. And I thought about in the same case here, right? If you don't take an opportunity that opens up in front of you, and I'll talk about examples of that in my life or in other people's life in a second. If you don't go through the door, right, because of fear, because of pain, because of the unknown, because you can't see the whole room through the door, you can just see what's through the door frame, then you know for a fact that nothing is going to change. Now, if you're completely 100% happy with your reality as it is now, then that's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't go through the door, right? But I think the number of people where that's the case is almost zero. But if you go through the door, right, you may not change that significantly. It may be a difficult experience that doesn't come to anything. There's a chance of that, right? But at least you buy a ticket and something could happen in the next room that could drastically redefine and change your life for the better, right? And I've been reflecting on this because we've been asked to kind of review the under-23 program, and I've got a call in next week where I'm going to sort of give feedback, and I'm going to make this philosophical point to them that, like, I remember in May 2023, and you came with me for this, I went to my first GB under-23 training day, and I was terrified. I was not good, right? I was anxious. There was this kind of social pain involved in that because I knew nobody rated me as a player in that situation. I was sort of just plonked in some lineups and felt very ineffective in them and all this kind of stuff. But I went through that door, and 2 years later, which isn't that long, 2 years is not that long. 2 years later, I'm playing in South America, playing significant minutes in this program, and, be able to perform on a world stage like that. Result aside, I got the opportunity to do that, okay? And that's looking at it just purely based on the thing, right? But going into that room, going through that door, despite the fear, despite the anxiety, has opened up so much, it's ridiculous, right? Would I be living in London without the under-23 program? No. Would I have the social group and the mentors and the coaches that I have now? No. Would I be in the shape that I'm in physically and mentally and spiritually? No. Would I be in the relationship that I'm in now? Like, would I have met this girl? No. Would I have had the plethora of ideas for the podcast based around observations from basketball environments? No. It's like this door that I decided to go through opened up everything in my life now, right? My lifestyle, the fact that I get to wake up at the time I do in the morning, the fact I have the time to journal and to think about ideas that I bring to the podcast, it's all because I just decided to see what the hell happened. Now, was it a conscious decision at the time? No, but now it is. When opportunities open up in front of me, I take them seriously, despite the anxiety. You know, we're going to have more opportunities, Jacob, to go and speak to people because of the podcast. We're going to have bigger guests that come on. We're going to have people that make me go, oh, God, am I going to be able to hold my own in this situation? We're going to have opportunities to talk in front of crowds, maybe crowds full of some skeptics of what we do. And that can provoke fear and anxiety. But imagine what might be in the room when we go through that door. We don't know. And just like that girl said about the importance of going out into the world and giving it a go and seeing what might happen, we have to buy a ticket. Otherwise, you know there's going to be no outcome. And the final thing I wrote here that I'll finish with is because of all this, right, I will always be indebted to the game of basketball, right? What I found in the next room, right, using that same going through a door analogy, is so much grander than the courage I had to muster to go through it. The game of basketball will always have given me more than I gave to it. And people, you know, you will have things like that in your life. You will have opportunities. You will. You're a person in the world that does stuff. Unless you just sit in your room in your bed all day, right? Things will open up. You'll meet a person. You'll have a job. You will be in an education system. You will go out in the world and you can find a hobby. You can start a new skill. Whatever. Doors are there to open. It's like fucking Monsters Inc., mate. They're coming in from here, there, and everywhere. You've just got to decide to go through it. And yeah, it might fail. Yeah, it might not be the outcome you want, but at least there'll be an outcome. At least you'll have played the game. At least you'll have made a move. And, you know, I know this, we talked about things on this line before, but it just kind of all hit me. And yeah, what are your thoughts?
Most people don't change. They make small changes, like they dye their hair a different color or they buy a new car. But most people don't make the big changes. And I think where we're at is it's not too hard to find these opportunities, go through a different door and other things open up. So I think the hard part is the person that's starting. And that requires more of a drastic change, I think. Well, maybe it doesn't have to be, but to me it seems like they're gonna have to. Yeah, I think they're gonna have to make more of a drastic change. It's going to be harder for them. They haven't even kind of haven't even started to alter their destiny. So
I think it is true that as you get older and as you, let's say, refine your life path and you become more committed to, like, you know, you have a family or you commit to a work, you know, a choice of work and a place of work, let's say the number of doors begins to decrease for sure, because just logistically your opportunity to try out different doors and go through them and the different opportunities that open up to you will decrease. I'm fully aware of that. But that's why when you're young, you got to take big swings. That's what Jimmy Carr said on Rogan. When you're young, you should be swinging. Just swinging at random shit and seeing what's happening, because it doesn't have to land. And I just think it's powerful, man, because I'd look back and I'd go, God, imagine if I hadn't made those choices. Like, I also thought about it on my drive today, right? This podcast was a consequence of you sending me a message on Facebook Messenger when we hadn't spoken in like 3 years. It was, right?
Yeah.
I put a YouTube video about meditation. You saw it, you messaged me and went, saw your video, thought it was cool, do you want to meet up or something? Right? Imagine if you hadn't sent that message. Okay? Or that message was a door opening up in front of me, someone I hadn't reconnected with in a couple of years. Right? There was all the sort of family stuff that had come with that and the weight of it all, but instead I was like, okay, I'm going to walk through that door and see what it's like. And then we met up and things started going well. We realized we were on similar wavelengths, similar positions in life, had similar worldviews, met up more regularly. And then it's like, well, the podcast sprang from me and you going to a sauna. We just used to go to a sauna, get sweaty and chat about life. And we were like, we should do this more often. So then the podcast became an excuse to do that. But the thing is about me and you, Jacob, so many people say things, you know, I want to do this thing, but then it doesn't really happen. But when you were like, should we do a podcast? And I was like, yeah. We then just did it. The door, we kind of created the door in front of us and then just walked through it. And there is fear. I remember the first time we recorded, or first time I saw things online, or the first time you were like, "Oh, this person from your personal life followed the podcast." I'm like, "Oh shit!" Like, exposing a new part of myself. There's anxiety involved in that. But we're just starting to explore the room on the other side of that door. And to be honest with you, we've barely explored a fraction of that room. It could be anything. There could be anything in the unexplored territory. But if we'd just gone, look at the eyeballs on this, or look at the amount of work it's going to take, or whatever, and not gone through the door, not bought a ticket, it'd be so different. And it's interesting, isn't it? Small things define your life. Small little actions. You sending that message, me reciprocating it. I could have gone, "Oh, sorry, man, I'm busy." Nothing happens.
Butterfly effect. I mean, now I think people see you and they see you in a big world championship, and they see you on their phone screen popping up your massive face. But they just kind of see that as like, that's Joel, that's what he does. But it's interesting how it wasn't always like that, and it took a butterfly effect to really kind of stem those things. And yeah, you'll create that butterfly effect, but which is exciting because you don't know where the butterfly doesn't interpret was a volcano or was it an earthquake?
An earthquake, yeah.
An earthquake, that butterfly is supposed to cause, they don't interpret it. It's just a flap of the wings away.
Well, what I like about you, Jake, right, is you do stuff. You do stuff sometimes to your own detriment, but you do stuff and then you figure it out later. Most people don't do that. Most people sit in like a state of like over-analysis paralysis and just think their way out of taking action, right? Even with Latunia, right? You were like, "I want to start a clothing brand." Right, fuck it, I'll do it. Right? And even though it hasn't been successful up until now, you've just done it and then figured it out later. And although that looks like, "Oh, he took a big risk, he took a big swing and didn't work," you're willing to do it. And that is something that you can't, I don't know if you can develop that as a skill. It's just a thing. It's just something you have. And that's why I like working with you, because it's like, "Do you want to start a podcast?" All right. Oh, we're doing it now. You're like, "Oh, you don't really know how it works. How do you upload things on Spotify? How do we make people care? How do we clip up shit? What do we talk about? Who do we get on? How do we get a guest? How do we get bigger guests?" You're just doing it. You just did it. You just emailed people. You just made the videos. You just did the thing. You just put the hours in. And that's how many other groups of young people have said, "Oh, we should start a podcast," and how many of them do it?
Yeah, it's a big thing of English culture where it's praised about the idea, but not to bring it into reality.
You're a doer, Jake. You're a doer, and that's why you're so valuable.
I just try not to. The process between thinking and action, it needs to be very short. Like the podcast was a week later, maybe, from thinking let's start one to let's do it. I think it gets easier once you make the first couple actions. Like, people know I'm serious when I say I'm going to do something. Because I have that history behind me. Recently I've got to show you this Heathrow reel that I did. I go to one of my friends and I'm like, "Okay, I have all these posters. We're going to troll these people at Heathrow. It's a very big grey area. It's kind of not very legal, but it's going to make a really cool video and
It's not legal.
overcome some of our anxiety." And it's I get a lot of joy. It's just the joy of overcoming that fear. So my fear tolerance is very high now, very high fear tolerance. And I think
it's a mad meta skill to have. A mad meta skill.
Yeah. So other things just kind of don't seem that. It's just building character. That's what it is. Other things just don't sort of seem as hard. And we kind of,
We talked about this. You talked about this at the beginning before we started recording, right? The importance of leverage. How much does character give you leverage? It's mental, because you are your character all the time. Every time you make contact with reality, every move you make, every conversation you have, everything you start, every piece of work you make is tainted by your character. But that is the ultimate tool to sharpen. It's not obvious, it's not sort of easy, but it's your character traits that make your life.
I like how you said before and how it's a huge asset. It's hard to measure, but that will unconsciously contribute towards everything. And it's just there. You don't think about it. Your character is it follows you and it gives the personality to everything that you distribute it with. So,
and I think your doing mentality does make life your playground, because you're a creative in that way, where you'll go, got this idea for a video at Heathrow Airport, do it, just do it. The world's your canvas. You can paint whatever picture you want on it. You're just like, this will be interesting, let's do it. How many people just at the idea stage just go, but it wouldn't be possible because there are security guards and, it might be a bit illegally sort of wary and, it's a big place, there'll be loads of people, whatever. But no, they because they don't paint on the canvas because they don't want it to look stupid or whatever, go wrong. Whereas you're just like, let's try, let's have a go.
I think you have to give no fucks as well. Yeah, I think I'm very at that stage where it's hard to make me care what someone thinks.
How do you stop giving fucks?
You go through some tough shit where you publicly are laughed at and publicly are failing, and then everything doesn't seem as bad. And then you make us a win publicly, and then you get to the stage where some bloke in London wants to help, wants to invite you to his sensory deprivation tank.
Yeah.
And then it's like none of that little thing that those public said outweighed the bloke who just gave you that free experience, because what you're doing is more valuable to him than it is to those people. Or recently, Simon Squibb made a video with me, and that I care way more about that than him recognizing me than this small minority of commenters. Or Memeless has made a video of us, and that's way more important than these other commenters, because his thing is worth way more. So I think how do you stop making people care? I think one way is to win, because then that's ideal. But if you put yourself through something rough, then and you already are publicly have a kind of weird reputation, people think you're weird, people judge you, and you kind of already have gone through that, then I don't mind. Now I'm at that stage. So I'd say both ways.
Maybe a way to frame it then is go, okay, experience social ridicule. It's going to be painful, but you realize you survive it. You realize that these people aren't talking to you when you wake up in the morning or when you're eating breakfast or when you're doing dishes or whatever. It's this weird sort of skewed reality that's separate from your actual life, and you can deal with it, right? You survive it, you get through it, you don't die. And after that, in the aftermath of this, you realize that the thing is important enough to you that in spite of the chance of that happening again, you still want to do it. And that's then when you go, you might still give a bit of a fuck, but you give way more fucks about the thing itself, that the way it's perceived just dissipates in significance.
It's just getting there and you realize it's not as bad as you thought. And then you can go one further and it's not as bad as you thought.
But those people that don't really know who you are or what you're about, and they wouldn't they don't care about what you're having for dinner, or they don't message you saying hope you're okay. They're not in your life. Then they're just commenting and they're just talking into the void about what you do, and that's fine. At least you're commanding attention. At least you're making them think. You're making them feel a certain way. In the same way that a painter or an artist in any manner, by putting their art out in the world, it's now not really theirs anymore. It's just everyone's own interpretation of it, and that's part of being an artist. That's part of creating. Yeah,
I like that. That's beautiful. That art no longer belongs to that person. It belongs to everyone. Yeah. Do you want to wrap this one up?
Yeah, man. We can certainly do that.
Thank you. If people got this far, it'd be nice if you could give us a little review and a little 5 stars on Spotify would be absolutely lovely. Thanks for listening, everyone.